Aristotle. Aristotle is second only to Plato as a towering figure in philosophy and Western civilization. His influence on the course of philosophy from his own time and through the Renaissance is foundational. The range of his surviving works, some 32 treatises out of a corpus conjectured to number close to 200, is staggering. He wrote in the philosophical fields of logic, mind, epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, political theory, aesthetics, and rhetoric, as well as in science including physics, astronomy, geology, biology, and psychology. Aristotle was a virtuosic theorist, but also an intensely observant empiricist. So compelling is Aristotle's work that scholars of the medieval and even early Renaissance period often heeded his opinions slavishly. Yet even today, his empirical methodology exerts a profound influence, as does his approach to literary criticism. All that we know of Aristotle's life comes from the largely conjectural work of ancient historians and biographers. It is generally agreed that he was born in 384 BC in the Macedonian city of Stagira, from which he was sent when he was about 17 to Athens for study at Plato's academy. He remained associated with the academy until Plato's death in 347. In that year, he moved to Assos, on the northwest coast of modern Turkey, as the guest of his fellow academic Herpyllis. When his host died some 3 years later, Aristotle moved to Lesbos. Both in Assos and Lesbos, Aristotle continued to pursue philosophy as well as what today is called marine biology. He found time as well to meet and marry Pythias, the niece of Herpyllis. The couple had a daughter named for her mother. Aristotle earned sufficient renown to merit a summons in 343 from King Philip of Macedon to serve as tutor to the king's 13-year-old son Alexander. He took up residence in the Macedonian capital Pella and tutored the future Alexander the Great for anywhere from 2 to 8 years. Historical opinion varies on the span, largely because almost nothing is known of the philosopher's life between 341 and 335, when he returned to Athens to establish his own school, dedicated to the god Apollo Lyceus, and thus known as the Lyceum, or Lyceum. The early generations of philosophers associated with Aristotle became known as the Peripatetics, perhaps because they conversed along the Peripatos, or walking area on the Lyceum grounds. Lyceum students and teachers both studied and researched in virtually every field of philosophical, scientific, and aesthetic endeavor. Under Aristotle's guidance, the Lyceum compiled a large library, which some describe as the first notable library of antiquity. During his Lyceum years, 335 to 323 BC, Aristotle wrote his chief works: Physics, Metaphysics, Nicomachean Ethics, Poetics, On the Soul, and Poetics. Pythias died during this time, and Aristotle became involved with Herpyllis, who may have become his wife or was merely his slave. Among the children of Aristotle and Herpyllis was a son, Nicomachus, named after the philosopher's father and presumably the namesake of the Nicomachean Ethics. Aristotle felt compelled to leave both the Lyceum and Athens in 323 due to an upsurge in anti-Macedonian sentiment in that city. He settled on Euboea, an Aegean island off the central Greek coast. There, in 322, he died, presumably of natural causes. Vast as Aristotle's contributions are, they fall into three broad areas: philosophy, practical or applied philosophy, and natural philosophy, or science. Within the first area, he wrote foundational works on logic, metaphysics, and epistemology. In practical or applied philosophy, he wrote on ethics from a practical rather than theoretical perspective, war, politics, and economics. We can also include his extremely influential practical works on rhetoric, oratorical persuasion, and aesthetics. In the field of natural philosophy, Aristotle contributed to physics, astronomy, geology, biology, and psychology. Philosophy. Logic. Prior Analytics, circa 350 BC, contains Aristotle's earliest contribution to deductive or syllogistic reasoning, and is history's first known work on formal logic. It is the first of 6 extant Aristotelian works on logic and the scientific method, which were compiled by Andronicus of Rhodes, or his followers, into Organon about 40 BC. This work is the essence of Aristotelian logic, including the concept of the syllogism. Metaphysics. This work, its date of composition unknown, is a collection of Aristotelian treatises that were first compiled and arranged by Alexandrian scholars in the 1st century AD. It was they who gave the work its title, meaning roughly beyond the physical. It is the founding work in the major traditional branch of philosophy called Metaphysics, which is dedicated to the examination of the nature of reality itself, including the relationship between mind and matter, substance and attribute, and the potential versus the actual. Metaphysics questions the theory of forms posited by Aristotle's teacher, Plato. The theory holds that the things of the physical world, available to us through our senses, is less real or less true than ideas or forms, which are absolute, timeless, and changeless.
Are you a philosophy student or just have a general interest in philosophy? Since ancient times, brilliant philosophical teachings and dialogues taught by great luminous minds have deeply elevated the way we think and live. The Complete Philosophy Primer is a comprehensive, organized, easy-to-read, and all-encompassing guide specifically written for students in their first college-level philosophy course, as well as anyone with an interest in philosophy. With this jam-packed philosophical guide, you will optimize your knowledge in philosophy, logic, ethics, its history, and branches. Learn philosophical concepts, term definitions, and biographies. Find lists of essential books, films, blogs, websites, and other resources. Improve your writing skills. Learn how to argue effectively. And most of all, learn how to be a better student. Order your copy today to philosophize your mind and illuminate your wisdom.
Aristotle interrogated this theory with 3 essential questions. What is existence? How can things continue to exist yet undergo the changes that are part of the natural world? How can this natural world be understood? By way of answer, he explored language and its roots, common sense, and the natural world itself based on his close empirical observations. He concluded that reality inheres in things, not separate ideas or forms, which he defined as substances composed of matter and form. Using Socrates as an example, Aristotle asked how he came to be, since he obviously did not exist before he was born, and concluded that matter has its form, in this case the form of Socrates, imposed on it to become what it is, in this case Socrates. Epistemology. Aristotle's metaphysics, the idea that reality inheres in things, is often called immanent realism. And immanent realism dominates the philosopher's epistemology. Where Plato's epistemology begins with ideas, or forms, Aristotle's begins with things and rises to ideas, the knowledge of the universe. Thus, syllogistic reasoning, argument from both induction and deduction, achieves access to truth, whereas for Plato, truth is generated exclusively through deduction from ideas or forms, which are effectively a priori principles. Practical philosophy. Ethics. The essence of Aristotelian ethics is as expressed most thoroughly in the Nicomachean Ethics. The basis of ethics is action in accordance with virtue, which is defined as acting according to one's proper function. For a human being, a virtuous action is action of the soul in accordance with reason to achieve eudaimonia, or happiness. All ethical considerations flow from this concept of virtue. Politics. In his treatise, Poetics, Aristotle argued that the city is a natural form of government and that man is by nature a political animal. His political philosophy flowed from a contrast between true government, defined as government conducted for the good of all, versus perverted government, defined as government conducted for the good of one or one section. Ultimately, tyranny is the most perverted because it exists solely for the good of the tyrant. Conversely, constitutional government is the truest because it is of the many. Importantly, Aristotelian political philosophy holds that no true government can be of all. A democracy, though less perverted than either tyranny or oligarchy, government of the rich, is nevertheless a perversion because it is government of the poor. Economics. Also in his Politics, Aristotle developed an economic philosophy addressing the nature of property and trade. He defined both private property and the use of money as practical enablers of the utility of social arrangements. Nevertheless, he objected to profiting from retail trade because it used goods as a mean to an end rather as ends in themselves. This, Aristotle reasoned, was contrary to nature, as was profiting through interest. Rhetoric and Poetics. In his Rhetoric, Aristotle laid out rules for persuasion, describing three basic forms of appeal: the appeal to ethos, arguing on the basis of one's own good character; to pathos, the emotions of the audience; and to logos, an appeal to logical reasoning. Within these broad categories, his Rhetoric is a veritable catalog and handbook of persuasive techniques. In his Poetics, Aristotle essentially created the profession of aesthetic criticism, chiefly literary criticism, although many of the aesthetic principles are also applicable to other art forms. The Poetics may be regarded as a founding document of aesthetics as a branch of philosophy. Natural philosophy. For Aristotle, natural philosophy is the equivalent of what is encompassed today by science. It is philosophy devoted to examining and accounting for the phenomena of the natural world. Many of Aristotle's most specific concepts are factually incorrect. Nevertheless, they were all very influential through antiquity and into Middle Age. Chief among these is his concept of the five elements: earth, water, air, fire, and ether, or divine substance, from which all matter is made. Also highly influential was the concept of the four causes, to the interaction of which, he argued, the reason for the happening of anything can be attributed. The four causes are material, formal, efficient, and final. In Aristotle's analysis, dining, for example, is the final cause produced by wood, material cause; design, formal cause, in this case the design of a wooden table; and carpentry, efficient cause, the skilled working of wood in accordance with a design. The result is dining around a table. As an empiricist, Aristotle made various significant observations concerning astronomy, geology, and biology. Most extensively in On the Soul, he formulated a theory of mind and psychology, arguing that human beings possess a rational soul, seat of thought and reflection, in addition to a sensitive soul, seat of mobility and sensation, and a vegetative soul, seat of reproduction and growth. Plants possess only the vegetative soul, and animals possess both vegetative and sensitive souls, whereas human beings possess all three. Aristotle's most enduring contribution to natural philosophy, as well as philosophy itself, is his elevation of the empirical over Plato's conception of the ideal. This vision of the natural world and humanity's place within it is one in which people are seen as competent not only in mind but in body and sense. In this respect, the philosophy of Aristotle may be said to give humanity a place in the world.